Welcome, and thank you for joining us today for Truro Town Council's Committee of the Whole for Thursday, February 19th, 2026. I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. I, Kathy J. Henton, Mayor for the Town of Truro, acknowledge Huron Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. We acknowledge the peace and friendship treaties and recognize we are all treaty people. We recognize African Nova Scotians are a distinct people whose histories, legacies, and contributions have enriched this part of Mi'kma'ki known as Nova Scotia for over 400 years. We recognize the Acadians who lived in harmony with the Mi'kmaq, whose communities across the province are a living testament to the fortitude of their ancestors who survived the Grand Arrangement. Today, as both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, we commit to seek harmonious and mutually beneficial relationships. We give thanks to the elders and knowledge keepers. On our agenda today, the first item is the approval of today's agenda. Are there any deletions, additions, or changes to the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda for February 19th, 2026 is approved. Item 2 is the approval of the draft committee whole minutes from November, from November 20th, 2025. Are there any changes to those minutes, if you've read them through? Any additions, changes? Seeing none, the minutes for the meeting are approved for November 20th, 2025. Item 3 on the agenda is the East Hants REMO request. Mr. Dalter, if you please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council received a letter from the Mayor of East Hants requesting inclusion in the REMO for Colchester. So, Madam Mayor, I'm going to just read the letter just so for Council's overview. So that on behalf of the Council of the Municipality of East Hants, I'm writing to express our interest in collaborating with the Town of Truro through participation in the Colchester Regional Emergency Management Organization. With the introduction of Bill 455, the establishment of the Department of Emergency Management, the Province of Nova Scotia has clearly signaled its intent to move towards a regional emergency management organization, also known as REMO model, across the province. This direction reflects a vision of greater regional cooperation, shared resources, and coordinated preparedness. Our municipality shares a border and mutual aid relationship with the Colchester region. This natural connection creates a strong foundation for collaboration. Furthermore, municipalities have developed a strong EMO program with proven organizational and planning depth. This strength aligns well with the Colchester REMO structure and would serve to complement and enhance the region's overall emergency management capacity. For this reason, our council respectfully requests that the Council of the Town of Truro give consideration to allowing our municipality to become partner in the Colchester region REMO. Council believes this collaboration would not only align with the province's direction, but also provide tangible benefits for residents across all municipalities. Council thanks you for consideration and look forward to the opportunity to discuss this further. So, Madam Mayor, this is brought for the Committee of the Whole for information for Council. What we will do is we'll have a discussion as well. Our REMO partners for the public are the County of Colchester as well as the Town of Stewiacke. So we, excuse me. So the REMO itself provides the emergency management planning and operation of the EOC for the Colchester area. Certainly in some of the events of the past, East Hants is a well-resourced community, and they have, knowing personally the CAO from East Hants, they have a very advanced emergency plan. One of the challenges that they have is that under the reorganization, under emergency management with the province, is that certainly the city of Halifax, which they are obviously quite close to, runs its own operation, and really East Hants would get lost in that. They really don't have a lot in common with West Hants, and therefore they've expressed an interest in working with us. Certainly we would benefit, I think, in that relationship, and the fact that in prolonged operation of the EOC, the more staff and the more resources that can come to bear dealing with an issue certainly would benefit all those involved. Clearly, there will be some situations where the EOC or the REMO may be meeting where East Hants would be involved in the initial discussion, but in the actual activation, if it's something that is not affecting them directly, they may not be directly involved, and then that's all the details that we can work out on the response itself. But I'm sure they would be willing to provide personnel. So the next steps, Madam Mayor, with this would be we'll discuss with both the county and the town of Stewiacke to ensure, and again, this would have to come before the REMO itself for discussion, and we'll bring this to the public meeting on in March for council to agree to work with our REMO partners, Stewiacke and the County of Colchester, on including or not including, depending on council's wishes, the County of East Hants in our REMO. So again, that decision will be brought to council to consider.
So you've got some follow-up to do.
Yeah, we'll do some follow-up on this. Again, myself and the CEO from the county have discussed, and he will be doing similar to bringing it to the county council. We don't see any issues with this. In fact, I think it enhances our capability to work with East Hants. So again, there's really no downside on this, and it'll be positive for the community and having more resources available.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Okay, I see no questions. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Dolter, and we look forward to receiving that information. So we're going to move on to our last item on the agenda for today, and that is the current state of infrastructure for municipal street networks. And I believe our Director of Public Works, Oliver Browning, is going to do a fascinating presentation for us today. Once he lights his button up, we're good to go. Yeah,
Screen down now?
yeah.
All right. Stephanie, is it already in run mode when I open this up? Is it already in run mode when I open this up? I don't see. Double click? Oh, hold on.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yep, it's good.
Okay. Okay.
So this is entitled The Current State of Infrastructure, Municipal Street Network.
And I brought presents.
Yes. Thank you. Colorful.
So I just, the package I just provided you guys is just the maps that are included in our, in the presentation and in our plan where we house our data and where we illustrate our data. So it'd be easier to have it in a, albeit still a reduced print, but a larger print that you'd see probably on the presentation. So let us begin. So the scope and objectives of this work is to identify the current state of the municipal street network of the town of Truro by assessing and rating the current level of service of the street infrastructure, physical condition, probability of failure, consequence of failure, as well as risk and prioritization of street infrastructure within the system. The methodology used was adopted for asset management practices currently being implemented, was developed by the Nova Scotia Department of Municipal Affairs and the Atlantic Infrastructure Management Network, AIM network, for municipal asset management. I'd like to point out that actually the Department of Municipal Affairs reached out to our office before Christmas and are kind of re-engaging or reinvigorating their efforts in this, and had a lovely meeting with the representative with them before Christmas, and looking to partner with them to improve how we do our stuff and then help them do theirs. So you'll note the methodology as this is presented. So it's a two-phase process. So the first phase is essentially a data acquiring, capturing exercise. As you move into phase two, we start analyzing what we have for information. So the more we know about what we have for existing about our existing assets. So the questions in phase one that need to be answered are, what do we have? What does it cost to replace? What is the condition? And what is its life expectancy? And as we move into phase two, once these questions are answered, we can then prioritize and say, well, what do we fix first? Because there is no bottomless pit of money, so we need to be able to prioritize just what exactly we tackle first. And we need the information to make those decisions as best we possibly can. So data collection. We have a total of 92 kilometers of asphalt paved streets within town limits. The estimated replacement value, or the opinion of value of this, is $51,442,000. We also, as you're aware, maintain 9 kilometers of asphalt paved streets within the Millbrook community currently. As far as level of service, our service delivery goals are always to comply with all legislative requirements, strive to provide capacity, quality, and reliability expected by council as well as our residences, strive to ensure safety of services and infrastructure, as well as consider sustainability and long-term benefits to future generations. So our current level of service, for some perspective, at present the percentage of streets of a condition rating, now I'm going to back up for a second here, noting that we updated condition ratings in part within the town in the fall, so before this winter or whatever and everything we're witnessing right now. So at present, as of then, from what we had evaluated, the percentage of streets of condition ratings of either good or very good within the town limits, not including Millbrook's community, is at 60%. For perspective, HRM, as decided in 2024 in an article at allnovascotia.com, they are maintaining their percentage of streets of condition ratings of good to very good at minimum to be 60%. So we're essentially on par with HRM right now. Conversely, from an article in November 24 in the CBC, 27% of all provincially owned public roads, excluding 100 series highways, have a condition rating of good to very good. Just for some perspective and comparison. So condition assessment. A few years ago, I developed this assessment criteria for a few different towns by looking and combining 3 or 4 different methodologies into something that is concise but also can be easily used by newer staff members so that consistent results can come about. So as you see, it's split into 5 ratings: very good, good, fair to poor, and very poor. So this is the methodology that we use when we go and evaluate condition of streets. And as I said, here's the ranking as it goes. Very good is ranked at 1, very poor 5. So the second map within your stack that I gave you illustrates the condition ratings of all of our streets. So just as in the previous slide that I just put up here, the color coding that's shown in the maps, dark green is very good, dark red is very bad, and as you move through the spectrum, you get the different levels. What I will note is that not only are we using these for another means of being able to communicate and convey this type of information, what's hiding behind this map, or what's within this map, is all the data that we have on our streets. So all the lengths, condition ratings, probability of failure, consequence of failure, and all that all live within this GIS model that we build for each of our assets. So this specifically for our streets. So I say, as a fall, our weighted average physical condition of our streets within the town works out to 2.47. So essentially, we're between essentially fair and good rating. Yep. No, by all means.
When you showed the visuals there,
The map?
yes,
Yep.
there are no potholes. So are potholes considered part
So-
of the process?
And I was actually prepared for somebody to be asking that, is how we treat like potholes, because what we're seeing right now, obviously, is everybody's noticing. So as you notice every year, and you know every year, we go through in spring, carrying into summer, pothole patching program. So if we go and do condition ratings, and when we do condition ratings, we do them after our patching program's complete. Because what the patching program does is essentially, you'll see coming into spring, a street get into what you would think would be a poor condition rating. By doing our pothole program, it slides it up back into a fair condition rating level and just breathes a little more life into it. And now, unfortunately, as you start patching and patching more and more of a street, the condition just completely deteriorates and you just can't breathe any more life into it. But that's essentially what we achieve. And so once we go and do a patching program, then if we're going to do reevaluation of physical condition, that's the time when we do it, because it picks up other deficiencies with it. So, yep. Sure.
I thought this work was done by an independent group.
It was years ago, and
Oh, so now we do our own evaluation?
yeah.
Thanks.
It's a little different methodology, similar, but we can do it in-house. It's just what I presented here. So it's a methodology that's easily adopted by our staff members and get consistent results. And it expands a little bit more as to what the outside entity or whatever was doing for us. It's just a little more in-depth, whatever methodology is all.
Chuck used to do it, he used to go around and do
Yeah.
it, so they do the rating, and, as Oliver said, after the patching's done,
Yeah.
in the fall, we go through and do the ratings, right?
Originally, though, I think there was an outside company that we
Yeah, we did.
retained and
Yeah.
did one go-around to get us going on a different
Yeah.
methodology.
And I think they provided we adopted some software that they had, and we
Yeah.
used that to do the grading, but yeah, we have, for quite a few years, we've done our own.
Yep. So as you note here, here's the split. As I mentioned, or whatever property, 60% of our streets are rated as good to very good. Conversely, as you note, 16% would be considered poor to very poor. So we're in a reasonable spot right now as far as maintaining a reasonable level of condition of streets. It doesn't mean that we do nothing and it just stays this way by any stretch of the imagination, but I think we're doing okay. So probability and consequence of failure are two other aspects that we look at when we are evaluating risk and prioritization of, in this case, our streets. So what you see here, as you can, as the terminology is, it's pretty clear. Probability of failure is essentially how probable is it that the asset is going to fail, and the consequence of failure is what level of consequence are we going to experience if it fails. So the third map that you have in your package illustrates probability of failure, again, color-coded, red being very high level of probability of failure, green being low. By default, probability of failure equals condition in the case of streets, but we do have it open that if we do have any information historically or whatever as to how a street was built that would suggest that no, it's probably, the probability of failure may be a little higher than what we think or a little lower, we can adjust the value or whatever in itself, which then eventually adjusts priority. So in evaluating consequence of failure with our streets, they're determined based on an assessment of risk associated with the failure of sections of streets within the municipal street network, and it's based on road classifications. So arterial roads versus collector roads versus local collectors versus locals. So the criteria that we employ for consequence of failures, arterial roads, we assign as a 5 ranking, so catastrophic. Essentially, if we have our main streets in Truro fail, we're in a world of hurt. Collector roads are assigned a 4, being major as far as a consequence of failure. Local collectors are significant in 3, and local roads and industrial local roads are moderate at 2. Traffic levels primarily, and yeah, that's primarily, it's the easiest answer to say is that it's traffic levels. Essentially, the higher the traffic volumes or whatever, then it's an arterial. That's one of the main factors. So you'll note, I think it would be the 4th sheet, consequence of failure map. Again, color-coded similarly, and you note that the red streets are indeed our arterials. The greens are our locals. So priority rankings and evaluating risk. Priority ranking of each section of street within the town's municipal street networks determined with use of a weighted scoring system based on 3 factors. The weighted scores of each of these 3 factors are as follows. So condition rating overall is worth a total of 20 points. Street classification, whether it's arterial, whether it's collector, whether it's local, are out of 10 points. And what we call street population density is out of 5 points. I'll explain what each of these are. So our score, so the way we score streets, the street classification scoring, arterials are getting 10 points, collector streets 7, local collectors 5, local industrial 4, and locals 3 points. So these are the ones that are out of 10. Street population density scoring. So this represents the number of either residential or commercial units that exist on a particular street and is presented as a unit per kilometer of street length. So for the purposes of this assessment, these values are used to generally represent street usage and potential level of wear and tear. In other words, the more population on a street, the more the street is being used. So it's reflective of that. We're capturing that. And this is our geeky formula to ever be able to go and figure. Mm-hmm. Oh, yep. Yep. No problem. So, so our street risk and priority scoring, we bring it back. Slides cut off. Essentially, we've represented out of 25. This is why. So like in the overall asset management presentation that we had or whatever about a year ago, I presented how the priority matrix works. Everything is ranked out of 25, and depending on risk tolerance dictates what you see for the ranges of the levels of risk. So in this, oh good, we're just going to spin for a minute here. So essentially, what we're looking at is how we calculate it is we're factoring in condition, and as you see in the weighted scoring, condition is the primary important driver. But that can't be the only thing, because we do have to consider as well when we're looking at prioritizing things. If we had a bottomless pit of money, we'd just go straight with condition. We pave every single street as soon as it goes bad and move on. Fortunately, that's not the life we live in. So we need to go and start prioritizing just, okay, if we can't do them all, what do we do? So we factor in, okay, whether it's an arterial, a level of usage, we go a step further. If it's not an arterial, we're comparing locals, which has more population density, which then reflects usage and potential wear and tear.
Counselor, if you could just put your mic on so everyone can hear you at home.
Yeah, with the system, and I support it because, you know, there's a bit of science to it, but given the budget restrictions and like the arterial streets that'll have to be done every year, so it's possible for some of these local streets never to make it on the list, right?
I wouldn't say never, but it is like, there is the way that it's built, and it's because it is, you're right, of limited budget, that it is possible, and in fact, whatever, when we start meeting with our budget deliberations and we start talking about the streets we're looking at doing this year, we'll show you that as far as the rankings go, there are a couple of one arterial that the condition rating is fair, but is actually ranked scoring a little higher in priority than a local street, just simply because of the nature of the ranking system. And again,
I'll give you an example of where I'm getting at.
Yep.
And number one, I'm not lobbying to have this street moved up. I'm just giving an example.
No, I appreciate that.
Roosevelt Avenue.
Yes.
It was in bad condition when I come in 9 years ago. And it's still very low down the list. And I got a call the other day, and I explained to someone 9 years ago that it was scientific, and they're telling me my science is flawed because they can't move. So, I mean, that they're...
Yes. Yes, no, well, and it's not necessarily abnormality. See, the way that we've got this set up, it's reflective of the budget constraints that we have. So if we have less budget constraints, then some of these criteria that we use to go and weed out priority starts loosening, because then we can do more streets. In other words, the way that the system would kind of skew to would be even more heavily weighted for condition than whether it's the type of street or population density, because we have a more bigger pot of money to go pave more. Because the more constraint we got, the more we got to start honing in on these types of things. And so if we can, if Scott over in Parks and Rec could plant those money trees that I've been asking him to plant, or whatever, perhaps we could hopefully go and expand our budget constraints. But unfortunately, we're not. That's not the world we live in right now. And so this is what's reflective of it. So.
And my last question, seems like I'm monopolizing this thing, but
Not
I'm
at all.
trying to. I lost my train of thought. I seen Bill come on. So go back and go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Just was wondering about your equation there. Yeah, there certainly is not unlimited money. But when it comes to streets and sewers and stormwater management, those are I believe, the key responsibilities of the town.
Yep.
And as that, and I would put those in as, yeah, so we should budget accordingly in some sense. So I would, why wouldn't you put a year in there? And there was a timeline, so that within the equation, everything has to be done within a 30-year timeline or a 40-year timeline, and then you set the budget accordingly, and then that's the budget, because nothing should be set any more than 40 years. Because I know there are streets in town that it's been more than 40 years, and because there are side roads, a dead-end street, and they're awful condition, just terrible, and they haven't made it on the list in 40 years, and I don't think they're going to make it in the next 10. So, we're looking 50, 60 years for rebuilding, and I don't see that as a reasonable thing. And so I would see us setting the budget. Yeah, other things have to suffer, because streets are more, I believe, more important than other things that need to be done. So that's how I would view it, and by doing it that way, that would give me a better idea as what the true expense. Now, we might not spend the money to meet those goals,
Right.
But it would be nice to know that that no street is going to be untouched for any more than 40 years. Do you follow?
I follow 100%. And so listen, so with what, this is just the streets we're talking about right now today. We have our municipal water system evaluated the same way, in which we can do a similar presentation to get you guys understanding where we're at with that. What's in the works is the sanitary sewer system and the storm sewer systems. We're in the phase 1 stage of that chart that I showed you. What our goal is once we have our linear assets all evaluated this way, which includes these, water, storm, sanitary, sidewalk, and curb, that gives us the whole picture. So that gives us all the information. So we're not looking at things in isolation. We can look at things as what's underground as what's above ground. And just as you suggest, we can then, now we have the information in totality to be able to start thinking, can we go and start setting?
Yeah, because a street might be in poor condition, but underneath it, the infrastructure below the street is in very good condition. Whereas one might be in fair condition, but below it is very poor condition, and therefore it might be put forward.
That's right. And so that it's getting all this kind of information all together, so that way we can make these kinds of decisions and start looking at it in a bigger, broader context or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'd still like to see I think it's reasonable, and it speaks to your concern, is the length of time it takes to get to some of these streets, And I do see it as my principal responsibility as a counselor. There's several things, but, we can all decide what those are, what the priorities are. But, streets are high priority, sewers are high priority, stormwater management is high priority.
Our water system.
Our water system.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the basic infrastructure that's required to have a functioning municipality.
Yeah, I think it was probably about 5, 6, 7 years ago, maybe. We actually set aside a pot of money for some of the some of the smaller roads, because we knew exactly what you're saying, Deputy Mayor, is we never get to them because as Mr. Browning's indicating, you get, you get Willow Street's a good example. I mean, we paved Willow Street 3 times before we get, or 4 times before we get to one of these other roads. So we did set aside some money for the smaller streets. Trying to think of the name of the street, the small one in the Ward 3, that we knew was never going to get touched, right? So we did. What's that?
Lane Avenue, maybe.
Yeah. Anyways, it was one of the side roads. Anyway, no sidewalks and we recapped that. I mean, that's something that we would have to take a look at. But again, we have to do that with the consideration that it takes away money from some of these higher volume roads that may need the work. So,
But Mr. Dolter,
Yeah.
You're speaking within, the system of what's being budgeted for the streets.
Yeah.
What I want to talk about is what do we budget towards streets? And if we do it that we're going to make sure that we do everything within a certain timeline, that sets the budget for streets.
And-
That might increase by 10% or 15%
Yeah.
going forward, while other departments are reduced by 10 or 15% to cover
Yeah.
that priority.
and that's the goal of what we're doing right now with Ms. Russell, working with Mr. Browning and that. We're looking at trying to establish that type of, asset management tied into our budget forecast on where we think we're going, so that we can say, okay, in 4 years from now, here's what we feel we're going to be from a revenue perspective. Here are the conditions, somewhat of although we don't have in that level of detail, where we think some of these roads are going to be on where they sit on the list, and, trying to establish what that budget would be. The biggest issue we have is that winters do different things to roads, and we have roads that are, today are in good condition within one season, and this happened with Arthur Street a couple of years ago. In one season, in winter, it just fell apart. And we totally had not expected to be doing Arthur Street. And because of the volume of traffic that's on Arthur and Esplanade, we ended up having to divert everything onto those. So, we do, I think it's probably something to, to work on and maybe look at that, because clearly I would agree, and because we always hear people say, we haven't been paved in 30 years, and they're probably right. They may not have been, because they're a local road, and there's themselves and 2 or 3 other, homes on that road, and again, it's low volume, and the road may be in poor condition, but very few users. So we do have to look at, okay, how do we get to those roads? Because, with a rating system like this, it may be 60 years before we got to them, because they'd never worked their way up on that. So I think, point taken. I think we have to look at how do we address that,
And I think to expand on what Mr. Dolter said as well, so this is also fluid. Now, you'll see, and I'll make mention, I'll let the cat out of the bag, that basically we go no more than 5 years to reevaluate condition, because it is fluid. As Mr. Dolter said, or whatever, the winter, just this past winter is a good example, puts a beat down sometimes more than other winters. But to do it every year, then nothing would ever stay the same. So we'd have to go and commit on something. So what we look at is, okay, in the flavor of 5-year capital plans, if we go and set that we're going to go and reevaluate condition ratings every 5 years, then at least we get a fixed 5-year period where we have things prioritized. Right. And this goes for every other asset that we do this as well. So that at least we can go and hone in on a 5-year period. But then to be able to have a better appreciation of the bigger picture and longer term forecasting, once we get through all this, we have the information, a better understanding what we have for assets, where they sit, to be able to go and have an appreciation and perhaps go and look at some other things that we could adjust to be able to budget for.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you for the discussion.
Should be interesting budget deliberations this year. Councillor Talbot.
Yeah, my senior moment's passed. I remember my question. And actually, it was going to be about the pot of money that Mike had just mentioned, because I was always of the impression that we just went farther down that list with that pot of money, that we put the special, I think it was 0.5% tax in, that we raised that pot of money.
But that's, for road preservation tax?
Yes.
That, it's kind of yes and no. The road preservation tax is reserved for like overlays. It's not street rebuilds. So it's the prolonged life of essentially streets that we don't need to, before we have to blow them up and rebuild them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I understand it, the restricted use for that pot of money.
Okay.
Then anything else as far as rebuilds, whatever, would either be what formerly was known as gas tax money or from our reserves or operating cash, so.
So going forward, next budget, that might be something we can look at. We might want to reposition some of that money to get to some of these other streets. Worth a discussion.
Right. Right.
Thank you. Moving on, Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Browning, just curious, I know the last budget, Mr. McKinnon had been presenting on the capital expenditures, and, you know, we had all commented on how short a list of projects that was for the money being put in, and he had said, yeah, 5-6 years ago, we would have had a list 3 times as long for that amount of money. Given that the cost of paving is going up, given that climate change is impacting our roads more with more frequent freeze-thaw cycles, and as Mr. Dolter alluded to, destroying roads sooner than we expected, given that more people are driving heavier vehicles, and we got a lot more trucks and SUVs, and even the EVs with their heavy batteries, I expect us to see a lot faster degradation of our roads. I also see the cost of paving going up. At what point are we starting to just pour money down a hole? And if we are diverting from other departments just to try to pave, at what point are we just going to end up with a town that we're just paving and there's nothing else to do except drive?
That's essentially, once we have all this information compiled, and it's not just streets, again, like I say, when we have all our other linear assets evaluated, and even going further to that or whatever, the facilities. We're doing to do the same thing with facilities. We've got the same thing in the works or whatever pretty well. I think we've got a good handle on it with our fleet, at least with our department. All of this stuff are all things that require money in order to continue to sustain and continue to go. In order to make decisions as to what do we spend on, what do we hold back on, where do we direct money, we need to have as much information as we possibly can on everything that we own to be able to make these kinds of decisions. And if the decision at some point in time says we can't afford to spend more than X on streets and therefore paved streets, some paved streets turned into gravel streets, that's essentially... You know, that's a possible decision. I'm not saying we're going there.
Yeah.
But in order to make that decision, we need all this information in its entirety to know what we own, know what needs attention, know what doesn't, be able to prioritize ourselves, to be able to go make these hard decisions that we're going to probably be into making in the next while.
Well, and I think there are going to be some hard decisions ahead, but I also think it's one of those things we need to look at prioritizing things like public transit when we eventually get our study done and presented to council. There are a lot of things we need to do to prioritize walking and biking and transit in order to reduce the amount of cars on the road, because it's the amount of cars that are doing the damage. The faster you're going, the heavier your vehicle is, the more damage that's being done. I just brought up the budget presentation that Ms. Russell gave last year, and transportation and environment is the highest of the budget lines. They're taking up almost 25% of the total town budget. So with that much money going into that, I think that some of those hard decisions are coming at us a lot sooner than we might be expecting them.
And that's, well, I mean, we can discuss further this as well as, I mean, other potential priorities when we have our sit down and do our budget deliberations and have our little budget party we did last year, because it goes even further just to streets.
Yeah.
You know, I mentioned facilities. I mentioned, you know, our fleet or whatever, not just our department, but every other department.
Yeah.
You know, our other municipal service stuff, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, water systems.
Okay.
We got to, you know, I mean, this is everything that we own, and everything has a value and is what we use to provide services to the residences. And so if we decide to, you know, prioritize one thing or over the other, whatever that thing is, particular asset of maintaining or not, that'll affect the service that the town provides. We either lower the level of service of what this particular asset that we are lower prioritizing does versus another, Or if we even eliminate it, that means we're just not doing that offering that service anymore.
Yeah, well, even from your presentation to council earlier this month, the state of the fleet, there was a lot of red in that pie chart as well that
About 25% of our fleet is, as far as condition, yes,
that we need to be looking at.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try to,
What's that? Anne Murray? I lost her number years ago. Did you still have hers?
I do, I have her number. And
Oh, good.
I was surprised that she commented on it because she's very private, so it must be bad.
That's right.
So I'm going to get to everybody. Councillor Pryor?
Mr. Dolter, if our streets turn back into gravel, do we get a tax break?
Probably, that would be up to council. But I mean, you know, one of the things I think we have to realize too is that, and the good thing that we have done, we've added a lot of units to the town without increasing the amount of pavement, right? So densification has created, you know, has been a very positive move on our part because again, most of it is, you know, is infill and on our existing road system, so no additional pavement required. The other thing that I know isn't lost on council is we're paying for our road network that's used by 40,000 people with a tax base of a population of 15,000. And again, that's the problem. The wear and tear on our roads, particularly on Willow, on Roby, on Yonge Street, on all those roads, Brunswick, you know, Arthur Esplanade.
The arterials and collectors.
On all the arterials and collectors, it's, you know, town residents, yes, but there's a lot of other usage on there. And unfortunately, it's our residents that are paying for the roads that everybody else are using, but that's the system we're under.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, just on those points, you brought points up that I was already thinking about, and it had to do with densification, increasing the number of housing units in areas with existing infrastructure. That was a federal program. The federal government was elected last time saying that was one of their initiatives, is that they wanted to see municipalities densify housing units in areas with existing infrastructure. And there's also, but they also put some money into that, I believe, because that puts stress on that existing infrastructure. So are we just, I don't know what's going on, are we applying for some of that funding? Are we eligible for that kind of?
So we're expecting a program to be announced very soon. And we do have expansion lands, I think council's aware of, off William Barnhill. So we have everything done, ready to go to make that submission as soon as it's announced. So yes, we are going after those monies. So again, we're able to do development and put in the infrastructure required for that without it being put on the developer, reduce costs and therefore make it more possible and feasible to have that done, right? So.
Right. And Mr. Dolter, do you just want to comment further on what you were talking about when it comes to the county using our roads, et cetera, and the province re-examining the policy when it comes to town versus county and their what they're responsible for. In other words, they're looking at increasing dollars to towns, I believe. But could you just comment on that? Because
I
it's
think
sort of in the works, is it not? Or
I think there has been some discussion, but I don't think there has been any real movement. I know the province of New Brunswick is looking at some shifting the tax system where there would be money going to the urban centers that in order to provide for all the support they provide without the taxation to provide it. We've had some discussions. Again, the province has to take a look at this. I mean, we've got a number of towns that, are feeling the weight of what they're responsible for. And again, in the longer term, it's a difficult thing to sustain. We certainly have, even at the AMA level, we've had those discussions. It's difficult to see where it's going to go. And again, the province has to examine in its current fiscal situation on what support it's providing to, to some of the more of the rural areas as well, to the counties, and whether or not they should be providing all the services they provide, or whether or not that's a county responsibility, and that evens the playing field somewhat. And then potentially frees up provincial money to be used in other areas, which, you know, could be funding the urban centers. So tax reform right now is a thing that we do need. Again, that's something council, you know, it's a challenge. We are definitely underrepresented when it comes to NSFM and the province in general. The towns, you know, are a small portion of that, and the county representation, both from the provincial level and municipal level on NSFM, far outweigh our clout. And that's, you know, not to get political, but that's the reason why there hasn't been change made. Because our what we need is not being recognized, because, I mean, yet when the county started screaming about having to take over J-class roads, the province listened. Didn't listen to us when we had to take over provincial highway that ran through the towns, you know, and again, we're burdened with that now. So again, it's not necessarily fair and equitable for
Yeah, I want to limit the discussion, but I do think it's something that maybe we need to discuss with the other towns across Nova Scotia and approach NSFM to come up with a solution. And I thank you, Mayor, for your telling me to speed up.
Thank you, Deputy. So we're going to let Director Browning conclude with his presentation. Carry on, Director.
Right on. So you see in the slide or whatever in front of you, it's the last map or whatever in your package, and that is the risk and prioritization color-coded map, which you'll note or whatever is a vast majority is midterm to long-term. What I will point out is that the orange color-coded streets are referred to as short-term, so that is a 1 to 5 year expected range, albeit money dependent. But I would say I wanted you guys to have this, at least a copy of this, because it is a relatively clean, clear means to convey to you know, residences who may be asking questions of where does my street fall, what does, you know, where that's in the whole big picture of things or whatever. I mean, this is something that does actually kind of clearly convey that information. Well, that's cute. That previous slide was going to show that the opinion of value of each of the 5 levels of priority and risk of the streets. This shows by percentage. So in conclusion, the level of service of the town's municipal street network appears to be above current levels of most other streets throughout, or most other towns throughout the province, and seems to be generally on par with HRM. Level of service of the town's municipal street network appears to be above the levels of provincially owned public roads, excluding 100 series highways throughout the province. As I stated earlier, the weighted physical condition average is 2.47, represents fair to good. A majority of the asphalt surface street sections within the town's municipal street network's priority ranking, based on the evaluation criteria and methodology that I presented, was found to be between medium term and long term. So 73% of our streets fall within that range. So what's recommended is to continue to develop and implement asset management best practices to ensure that the town's municipal streets network, as well as our other assets, are maintained adequately and that annual reserves for future maintenance and replacement are planned to be budgeted for at levels that are at least that of the opinion of possible costs presented herein, so that the municipal levels of service can be maintained for residences. We want to continue to investigate and subsequently implement strategies for new revenue streams to assist with accelerating capital reserve replenishment. Continue to investigate funding programs at provincial and federal levels to assist in the capital expense of required replacement work and maintenance work that we're faced with. As far as part of the selection process for the street asphalt resurfacing, consideration should be given to the state of the underlying infrastructure as well, as we spoke about earlier. Deputy Mayor Thomas, your comments about sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and water having importance. Associated sections of sanitary sewer and storm sewer underlying sections of streets considered for asphalt resurfacing should be video inspected to confirm condition to avoid having to prematurely remove and reinstate new asphalt surfaces in the future. So this is the practice that we follow. And as part of street asphalt resurfacing planning, to promote fairness and transparency in the planning process. Since budgets restrict the number of streets in given years to receive asphalt resurfacing, we recommend to refer to the street priority ranking values within what we call the 2026 street prioritization calculations as part of the decision-making process. We recommend continuing to investigate various applicable asphalt street sealing methods and related advances in technology to incorporate into the town's asphalt patching program to hopefully prolong the useful life of existing asphalt surface streets within the town's street network. Street assessments are typically to be revisited and updated, no less than every 5 years, as stated earlier, to incorporate street resurfacing improvements and to adjust street prioritizations. But this year, we may consider reassessing after our patching program in 2026, just based on the nature of the winter that we had, and then start the 5-year count again. We'll see what we're up against once spring comes in. But yeah.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you for the presentation, and I look forward to some very colorful deliberations during budget time.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I want to thank everyone today, and again, thank you to Director Browning for his presentation. Our next Committee of the Whole meeting is going to be Thursday, March 19th at 4 p.m. Continue to be kind to each other and kind to our town. Happy and smiling. We are going to conclude our meeting today and be adjourned at 4:51 p.m. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.